Wow. Okay, so I talked for about a minute and I was muted the whole time. So now I'm not muted and you can actually hear me. And that's why I always do an audio check, which I didn't do this time because I forgot. But now I'm not muted, so you can hear me. Sorry about that. We'll get right back into this. I was going to say, as with most times, I sometimes forget this, but please go ahead and put in your. Yeah. Jay says, as a talking head, say, when I have nothing to say, my lips are sealed. So anyway, if you want to put in the chat where you're from, that would be interesting to know. It's always good to see where people are from in the Drupal world. And you might notice some hammering and things today. That is not a construction crew. That's my kids. I think today they've decided to be a construction crew on the hardwood floor that's right above me. So those are the things that happen these days. I was just today I'm wearing my Red Hat shirt, and I was just at the Red Hat Summit keynote. And it's the first big corporate keynote type thing where it was a guy wearing a polo shirt at his desk at home. So it's crazy times we live in, but we are we're making do. So how you doing? Where are you from? I see Nashville, Tennessee, Yorkshire. I'm from St. Louis, so hello from all of these different places. I know usually there's a couple folks from India too, but I wanted to also mention before the end of this month, which, what is it? It's April 28th, so we have 2 or 3 days or however many left. I always forget how many days are in each month. But there's only a couple days left to get your likes in on this video if you haven't done it already. I'm going to pause that. For every like on this video, I'm donating $1 to the Drupal Association. And for every $1 that you donate right now, it actually is matched twice. So every $1 equals $3 until there's $100,000 extra raised, which is $300,000 for the Drupal Association. So if you haven't already, go to this video on my YouTube channel and click like. And that's the easiest way to donate $3 to the Drupal Association. We have a music video of the week, and I've learned from the YouTube algorithm that if you play more than 10 seconds of anything, pretty much, then your video gets demonetized and you get a copyright strike thing. And there's all this insanity. So I have clipped 9 seconds out of the video for you to enjoy, and you can enjoy the rest of it on your own, in your own time, since if I put it on my video, then my video will get very sad. So here's the 9 seconds of it for you to enjoy and whet your appetite.
And you better back up before your sites grow. Drupal got a lot of users. I'm gonna need to see a lot of sites on this movement.
So a lot quicker than other weeks, but that song I think was 9 or 10 years ago. It was played at DrupalCon Chicago 2010, so it was at least 10 years ago now. But it is, I actually found a playlist that somebody set up on YouTube they have 9 music videos. So we have a couple more left after this one still that we can do, but hopefully we won't need too many more because we're getting very close to finishing up this entire migration project. So this week I'm going to go straight into finishing up the configuration split. And between last week and this week, GetResa, who I forget the name of this person, but I see them online all the time as GetResa, so that's what I think of them as. Anyway, GetResa, and if you're on here, GetResa, you can comment and say hello. But GetResa mentioned that there is a new feature that I had completely forgotten about in Drupal 8.8 that lets you do, it's kind of like config split light. It's a way to exclude modules entirely from configuration synchronization. And the way that works is you add a setting in your settings.php file with a list of modules. So on here it has devel and stage file proxy. And these modules, none of their configuration will be exported, and the module won't be exported in the core extensions list. So basically you can have, it's kind of like the light version of config split. Instead of splitting configs, you just say exclude stuff entirely. There's a couple issues with this. One is if you have a required, like if a module is required by another module and you have it in this list, its configuration won't be exported, so your configuration will become invalid. So this is kind of a pro level feature. You don't want to do this unless you really know what you're doing. config split is a little bit safer in that regard because it can deal with those kind of configuration splits a little more logically. But you can still shoot yourself in the foot with config split too. The key with all of these things is to test them and make sure you know what you're doing. But this, I want to still use config split instead of this functionality because I want to have the settings for Devel and settings for other modules that I might use locally to be stored in config, just separated out from my main site config. So we're going to continue on. I was on this documentation page and I was creating the dev split last week, but I got stuck on the step where you set up the folder that it's in. So I'm going to go over to my site, which is running here on localhost, and I'm going to edit this config split. So we called it dev. It's in the folder config/dev, which I created here. I forget who it was last week, but thank you again to whoever that was. That mentioned you have to create the folder manually. The module won't create the folder for you. So I created the dev folder, and I set it as active. And now the next step is I need to tell it what modules are in this split, what modules should be split out here. So I'm going to add the Devel module, which I guess it's not enabled right now. I want it to be enabled so I can put it into the dev config split. So I'm going to say Devel. Yeah, so we want that. Install it. And I'll refresh this page for the dev config split, and then it should be in this list. So there's Devel, and then it also says make sure it's active. Okay, and I don't know if I need to, I guess I'll add them in here too, the configuration items I want to have in the split. So Devel settings, Devel toolbar settings. And on my Mac, I can hold down the command key to select multiple things. You can't see it on my keyboard obviously right now, but I'm holding down the command key to select multiple. I think on Windows it's control or something. Somebody can post in the live chat how you can select multiple items in a multi-select list like this. And I think that's it. Save this. And now what does it say? Save the form, create the directory, export your configuration. Okay. So I'm going to export the site configuration, and I'll grab my command for that. Export that. And it should include the new dev stuff. So it added this git diff, or git status. So it actually added, okay, so it did do it correctly. It added Devel to config/dev, and it added the Devel toolbar and the menu setting. And in here, it should have the split. So it has in here the dev split has Devel settings, Devel toolbar settings, and it adds the module Devel to the list. And this, it doesn't mean that this is disabled, the 0 here, that this is the weight of the module. In Drupal, modules are weighted, so when it loads, it can load some before the others. Every once in a while, there's a situation where you might need to change the weighting of modules, and that's why that feature exists. But some people are like, oh, this means that Devel is disabled here. Well, that's not the case. This is the weight, so it's an integer value there. Anyway, so it looks like that set up the split correctly. Let me make sure I have my settings here right. Hopefully you guys can hear me still. I see the little audio meter working, and nobody's complaining at this point, and people posted their locations, so I'm guessing that the audio is working great now, and I'm not just talking to myself in my own room. I feel like Malcolm from Jurassic Park at that situation. All right, so I'm going to add these files. And this is issue number, what are we on? Number 40. Add dev config split settings. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and push those changes up to my branch. That way they can get testing. Down here, it should show up in the issue. Oh, that's interesting. It looks like the pull request didn't install correctly, and that could be, well, I don't know. Not loading the home page is different than installing Drupal failing, because it looks like Drupal did install correctly there. We can look at that later, but for now, I'm going to finish out this page. So you want to enable it in development, but not in production. So the dev split is active right now. If I go here, it says that the status is active, but I want to make it so that it's active locally for my development environment, but it's not active in production. So I need to go into my settings.php and set it so that it's not active in production. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to web, and close out of there, web, sites, default, settings.php. So in here, this will be my production settings.php. And I'm going to say config split settings. And then, is it config dev? What did they call this up here? Config dev. Mine is just called dev, so I don't need config underscore. I should add noise suppression. GitHub is down again? You gotta be kidding. Is it? Or you're just saying that, is it status.github.com or GitHub status? No, it's okay right now. I think you're just joking with me. But I do have PTSD because GitHub has been down 2 of the last 5 times that I've done these live streams. All right, so I have this config dev status equals false. So I believe that if I go here, I might have to, yeah, so it's inactive right now because this is the setting in my settings.php, but I have a local.settings.php. So I'm going to add that in here. I'm going to go here and I don't have to document that. Status equals true. And if I do that, it should say that it's active. Maybe I have to flush caches. Let's see. All right, so it says it's active now. And I also want to make sure that I update this in my template for the local settings.php file. And now if I'm going to, well, I don't want to reinstall the site right now because we're going to do some work with Apache Solr. But ideally, when I reinstall the site, since the setting is true in here, and it's going to override the setting in settings.php, which is false, then when I reinstall the site, config split will actually inject its own config, and the devel module should be installed because this split is active. Another note for config split, I believe it works fine just using config export, but you can also say, it's like config split export, or a short is like CSEX for config split, and CIM or C, I don't remember what it is, but there's different commands you can use, but I think it just all works with config export and config import, as long as you have the settings correct in your settings.php file like they are now. So I'm going to git diff, so I just added those settings, git add -a, git commit -m, fixes number 40, finish setting up the dev config split. Okay, push that up, and I'll go over to GitHub. So this failed too. I don't like how it's failing, because that means something's funny. It looks like Drupal installs correctly. It's probably something with caches or something like that. But I'll have to debug that later. I don't think that that's related to the config split, and if it is, I can fix that after the live stream sometime. But I'm going to go to the pull request, and I'm going to go ahead and merge it, even though it's still testing, because it looks like it's hitting a consistent failure, and we'll figure that out later. And then I'm going to go back here and say git checkout master to get back to my master branch, and git pull since I merged it on GitHub. And then we are finished with config split. So that wraps that up. You can get a lot more advanced with config split than we did here, but I know for one site that I was working on, we actually had a config split for local, a config split for a dev and a stage and a prod, and a config split for CI as well. So we had, I think, 5 config splits that we were managing. And it worked in the end. It takes a bit of getting used to, because you have to kind of like push up the code for config split being enabled, and then make your split in that environment, then export config, and then pull it down into your local, then commit it, then push up the code again, and then it's kind of with a lot of things when you're doing more advanced configuration, there's a chicken and egg problem, and that was kind of the issue there. But we have it working here. I'm happy enough with how that should work. We'll make sure that it works well after this episode. I'll reinstall the site and make sure that the config split stuff is working correctly. So let's see. And I did reinstall the site this morning with config split enabled, and it didn't have a problem locally. So I'm guessing it's just a CI issue. So let's work on search. So on my current site, if I go to jeffgeerling.com, I have a search box down here. And most people probably don't use this. I have some analytics on my site. I turned off Google Analytics, but I do have some other analytics, and I don't see a whole lot of traffic on the search pages. But I use it all the time because I have 2,700 blog posts, something like that, on a lot of different topics, and I refer to my own stuff a lot. And I could use Google search and use like site:jeffgeerling.com and then some keywords. But A, that doesn't have all of the data from my site necessarily. And B, I have to type in site:/Jeff And C, having your own site search and your own Solr index can enable some other functionality, which I'll show you in a minute. So the first thing is, like, if I search for Ansible, I didn't want to search for Ansible 101. Nope. Come on, Safari, you can do it. Just Ansible. No. Wow. That autofill is really trying to fill itself in. So I can search for Ansible, and I found I have a bug on my current site. The links here are black, even though they shouldn't be, because I don't have the dark mode CSS set up for that. But we'll fix that on the new site maybe. But I have a search page, and you can filter by date. You really can't see these dates, but you can filter by year, which is helpful for me because I know that, like, oh, I wrote an article about that in 2015 or something, and I can go back to 2015 that way really quickly. You can also filter by how many comments there are on the nodes. Sometimes that's helpful because I know that I had a more popular article that had lots of comments. There's other filters you can do too, and these filters can have more options available. But the search is really powerful because Solr is a good Lucene, Apache Lucene-based text parsing and filtering system. It's better than database search. Even if you're using Postgres with its search capabilities, it's faster and it's a little more tweakable and configurable for text-based search. And some other things you can do is like did you mean type things, and Solr will find different close matches for the words if you misspell a word, that kind of thing. But the main thing that I use this for is on my blog, every post that I have at the bottom, there's a block called Further Reading. And I used to manage this manually, and the problem is that when you have something that's managed manually, it's a lot of work to try to keep that up to date, and especially if you have lots of blog posts. So I put this block in, and it takes the words in the post, and it gives a little extra weight to the tags on the post that are down here, and it does a site search for them, and then it caches this block, the 3 top results for that. So this particular blog post is how I live stream with OBS and all this. So it's about live streaming and camera and media and video production, and it finds the top 3 related results. One is how I live stream masses. One is external microphones, display webcam content in a presentation. So it's related things, and a lot of times I did find that conversions for people on the site went up with this block versus the manually curated stuff, because I didn't have much time to find the best results for manual curation. So that's one thing I use Solr for a lot. So it's important to my site, and currently this site doesn't have any Solr stuff set up, so let's remedy that situation. There's no search box down here, there's no search pages, and the Apache Solr search modules aren't even installed. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. So the first thing I need to do is have somewhere to run Apache Solr. You can run it on your main search server. If you run your own servers, you can install Solr pretty easily on the server. I actually have, if I go to ansible.jeffgeerling.com, I have a lot of different automation tools to help you run Solr on your own if you want. I have a Solr container that runs Apache Solr in Docker. You can deploy that container to Kubernetes. You can deploy it to anywhere that you can run Docker. And I even maintain very old versions if you have an old Drupal site that needs to run Solr. Solr 3 and Solr 4 on there. I believe Solr 8 is out now, so I need to actually update this to have the latest versions. And there's instructions for how to use that container. I also have an Ansible role called geerlingguy.solr, which is down here somewhere. geerlingguy.solr. And this can let you install Solr on any kind of Linux-based server. So Ubuntu or Fedora or Red Hat or CentOS, Debian, any kind of server that you have, this will install Solr and get it running. But if you want to have an easier route to go, I run a service called Hosted Apache Solr. And Hosted Apache Solr is fairly inexpensive. If you know how to run Solr on your own, obviously, you can do it a little bit cheaper. But it's a fairly inexpensive service that lets you run a Drupal search index on a hosted Solr instance. So I actually have an account for myself. If I go to my subscriptions, I have my account set up under jeffgeerling.com Drupal 8 Search API Solr 7x. My old one was Drupal 7 on Solr 7x. So if I go to the setup instructions, it will reveal a password that I can use to connect. So I'm not going to show you that password because you could connect to my Solr instance and start doing things. But I'm going to move that to my other screen so that you will not see the instructions there, as long as OBS doesn't secretly show you my other screen, which I don't think it should. We'll get started with it. The first thing that you need to do, actually, well, let's see, is this a good idea? Probably not a great idea, but I can move the top over to my other monitor here. And this is the instructions that you can see. So you need to install the Search API and Search API Solr modules. So I'm going to grab those two modules, pop them in this window. And then you, after you have them installed, you go to the Search API Add Server page and you add the server according to the instructions on this page, which I will not show you since it has the password in it that you need to enter. So let's grab these two modules. Search API. It has a very recent release too. So I'm going to grab that. Actually, if I grab Search API Solr, it should grab Search API as well, because this is really what I need here. Looks like there's a new beta for 4.x, but I'm not going to use the beta. I'm going to stick with the stable version for now. Can always upgrade later, hopefully. So I'm going to grab that, and it should, I think, pull in the Search API module alongside it. We can check what it's doing if I look at composer.json and see. So it has Search API Solr here. And we'll see what else it grabs. While it's doing that, I'm going to grab a drink. Mr. Cook, who I still believe could be Tim Cook, even though you're living in Nashville, says it's smart to hide the password. Yes, it would not be a great idea to give the world the password. You can change your password on Hosted Solr, but I don't want to have to do all that. So I figure it's easier just to hide it and not broadcast it to the world. While I'm doing this, I might as well also mention that in the next week or so, I'm going to start doing a few not live stream. These will actually be produced videos, so they'll be slightly better, and I probably won't have myself muted at the beginning, on Raspberry Pi clusters. So I have my PyDramble, sorry about that, hitting the microphone. I have my PyDramble cluster, which this is the 4th major iteration of it, and I've been lucky to be sent the Turing Pi board, which has Raspberry Pi 3 plus compute modules. And apparently I'm getting warnings about PHP trying to download things from GitHub. So I'll allow that. Anyway, this board lets you run 7 compute nodes, Raspberry Pi compute nodes, and it gives you a network for them and the power and all that kind of stuff. So I'll be starting a series on that. I have the first video kind of in the can. I just need to finish doing some editing. I'll have that stuff available in the coming week or two. So please subscribe to the channel right below me, and you'll be able to see those videos as they come out. So it looks like it grabbed these things. Search API Solr's here. If I go here, it should have Search API. So yeah, it added 1.16, which is required by Search API Solr. So that's good. And if I go here and now say drush PM enable Search API, it should ask me, do you also want to enable Search API Solr? Or not, I should have done Search API Solr. We'll see what it does here. It'll probably just enable the Search API module. I also need Solr. And before I get too far, yes, the language module. I've never heard of the language module. I guess that's just for multilingual. Before I get too far, I also want to make sure git diff, not git diff, git status. I want to make sure I'm not on a branch yet, so I want to say git checkout -b. This is issue number 54, so 54 Solr. And then I'm going to go ahead and add these two new modules, git add, git commit -m, issue number 54, add Search API Solr module. And then I'll go ahead and git push that branch, -u origin 54 Solr. So now it's up on GitHub, that branches. I don't have a pull request open for it. I might as well, actually. I use the GitHub tool, so GHPR create. And it'll ask me for a title. That's good. Don't need a body. Submit the PR. The GitHub, the GH tool is really handy for doing things like managing PRs, checking out repos, opening repos from the command line, all those kind of things. And apparently I'm out of date on it, so I should probably update that sometime. Anyway, since I did that, it creates a PR here, and if I refresh the page, you'll see there's now a pull request open for this. So the GH command line utility is pretty nice. It used to be Hub, but they rewrote it in Go now, I think, and it's called GH. So we have the module enabled. If I can close these things here and go to localhost. And following the directions on the Hosted Apache Solr site, I should go to configuration, search, and then search API, and then there's an add server button. So I'm going to add server. Server name will be, we'll call it Hosted Apache Solr. We want it to be enabled. Backend is Solr. Solr connector basic auth, I believe. And the Solr host is, I have it in this issue here, Solr 1181. And the Solr port is 80. Solr path has nothing. Solr core is this, 5HE5U. Some sort of random string it generates. And then it should have a username and password. Okay, good. It doesn't show you the password, so I can enter it here. The username is 1181, and I will copy and paste the password, and you will not be able to see it because I'm so secretive and ninja-like. Anything under here that we need? We'll skip that for now. Okay, save. Some of those settings apply in certain situations, but not for my particular site. Solr was saved. You're using an outdated configuration set. Yeah, so one thing to note with the latest version of the Search API Solr module is anytime you make changes in the Drupal site, you actually have to update the configuration on the Solr server itself. And this is something where Hosted Apache Solr is set up for Drupal in particular. So if you have a Drupal site and want to use Solr, Hosted Apache Solr, which is run by me, so you can know it's an amazing and wonderful service, allows you to have custom configuration. Eventually that's going to be self-service, but for now you email support, which goes to me, and then I place your new configuration into place. So until I do that, though, it's going to say that you're using an outdated configuration set. And but I don't want to update it until I set up my fields and things. So it says the server could be reached. The latency is 121 milliseconds. Usually it's a lot less than that. I think, oh, that's because I'm running from here in St. Louis and the server's in New York. My jeffgeerling.com server's in New York. So on the real server, it's only like a 10 or 20 millisecond latency instead of 100 from St. Louis to New York. And it's running Solr 772. And there's nothing in the index right now. That's weird that it gives the whole thing. I thought it would show Hosted Apache Solr as the name here, but whatever. Everything else is working well, and I'm going to go ahead and set things up just a little bit. Custom field types, let's see if there's any settings in here. These are all the standard text fields for a Solr search index. If you get deep into Solr, you can change things here to make fields work a little more particular for your content. Or if you have multilingual, you also need to set up different languages and things like that. In my case, I just do English because I'm American, and Americans typically just know one language. Seems like everybody else. For instance, Rafael from Brazil probably knows more than one language, but a lot of Americans like me, we never were taught the importance of learning an extra language. And while I can understand Latin, that is not very helpful in a global audience. Maybe if I'm talking to a lawyer and need to talk about habeas corpus or something. So let's see. I think I have all those things set up. I'm going to go to Search API and add an index for the server before I get the config.zip. And the index name will be site content. And I'm going to add content. I don't want to have search for files. I don't think I need any. I don't need to search users, but if you do need to do user search or things like that, there's different ways you can do it. You can merge everything into one big index and have content and users and all that. Or for some sites I've set up, you can have like a user search section that just searches user data and a site content section that searches content data. I probably do, well, I don't know if I want to have taxonomy terms separate. I just want content entities which have taxonomy terms associated with them. Let's see, which bundles should be indexed? All items should be. Languages, all languages, which I just have English. Indexing, index order when they were saved, that's fine. I want to store this index on Hosted Apache Solr. This index should be enabled. And options. One note is that when you're building a Solr search index for a site where you have a production instance and a development instance or something like that, you can have production be read and write, and then you can actually pull back the configuration from production and set read only in your local config split so that you can still read search data from dev, but you can't influence the production database. Sometimes people forget about this, and on development, they start like playing around with their search index or reindexing content, and they don't realize they're actually influencing their production search content. This is a problem I see commonly. And sometimes you even set it up in CI in your continuous integration environment to reset your index every time you rebuild your site, and it's actually affecting production. And they're like, why is our production search always empty? It's because of that kind of thing happening. So always be careful with that if you ever have search enabled off of a production server. Index items immediately. That's okay on my side. I don't create new content that often, so I think that should be okay, but I might revisit that later if I find it takes longer to save a node. Let's see. Don't need to worry about that. Some of these settings are extremely advanced, and you probably don't need to worry about them. So save and add fields. So at this point, it's creating the index. And after I add all the fields I want to have indexed, then I can download my config.zip file and put it up on Apache Solr. So let's see. I don't want aggregated field. I don't know what that is. I do want the HTML output. I want it to be indexed as the anonymous user. If you accidentally change this, you can set it so that, I don't know what the spammer role is. I must have had that set up for something in Drupal 7. If you have it set as an authenticated user, then Solr will index your content as if it's logged in. And that could lead to information disclosure problems if you have a node that's unpublished or only visible to certain users, and it's indexed. Then people could search it and see it sometimes if you have things misconfigured. So for blog post, so this is something that changed. So let's see. You can choose the view modes to use for rendering the items of different data sources. So you'd want to do something, you could, if you're doing this, if you're really involved in your search setup, you can set up a search index view mode. In my case, I want the full content. So this will render, what this is saying is basically when you index the content, what things do you want in it? And what I want is the title, the date, all the text and images, and the tags and things. So all of this content will be indexed, but it will also index if you have, like if I have a field label, like body, colon, and then this, it'll index that too if I use the full view mode and it's in there. So it's saying, you know, if you use a search index view mode, you can exclude labels and that kind of thing. However, for my particular site, I'd be okay with having a label or something in there. Like I think on projects, there's a label. If I go to one of the projects on my site, there's a label for URL. And so each of these projects will have the label URL, and that could affect the search results a little bit, but it's not a big deal in my opinion. And it's, that's okay. So I'll do the full view mode for each of these, save it. And so I added the rendered output, and I don't need to worry about authored by because that's all by me. And I'm not going to do comment search because it can add value, but I'm not going to do that for now. I might experiment with that some other time. And I don't worry about people being able to search if it's a blog post or page or anything. And I'm not going to worry about the files because I don't display files. I just embed files in the post, or images for that matter. I don't think there's any other fields that I need in here right now. I do need the title. I want to make sure that that's in there so I can weight it. Did it add it? Field title was added to the index. Okay, that's good. And then tags I want to add. Okay, so that's all that I want to add to that index. I have unsaved changes. So I have full text, and then I have a title, and this is a string. Okay. I could boost this, but I don't want to boost it. So in Solr, any field that you add that has the boost capability, you can make it, it's kind of like weights in Drupal. If you boost this a lot, then the content that matches inside of this field would override content that matches in these other fields. But for now, I'm just going to leave Solr's default boost, which is 1. Is there anything else here? Everything's supported. That's great. Save changes. And now I need to go back to the index or the server and download the config.zip file again. So get config.zip, allow, that'll save it. We're doing good on time. I didn't know if I'd be able to finish this or not, but it looks like I will. So I'm going to move this over to my other monitor. I'm going to go ahead and do this operation on Hosted Solr and make sure that you guys don't see my passwords or anything. Hosted Apache Solr, drag this window over, and I will do this ninja mode again. My subscriptions, Jeff Kierling. All right, and then I'm gonna, so this is the part where you can chat with each other in live chat about how awesome Solr is. Since I'm doing this all on my other monitor and being very private about it, I need a terminal window over here too. Sites. And basically what I'm doing right now is I'm uploading this to the hosted Apache Solr server that this is running on. So just bear with me for a second. And do this. And this. Upload. And let's see if that works. Almost. It's restarting Solr. And it says it's restarted. So now I'm going to come over here. Solr takes a few seconds to start itself up. So I'm going to wait about 5 or 10 seconds for that to happen. Let's go back over to terminal. I can close out of here. Delete that. Okay. And pop over here. Hello, Ravi. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Let's see. Refresh this and let's see if this message goes away. Yes, it did. So it says it can be reached. Oh, could not be reached. Well, that's one problem. Let's see if it comes up. Still could not be reached. It could still be starting up. Let me, I'm going to go back over to Hosted Apache Solr in this other window. And I'll visit my subscriptions, Jeff Geerling, details. And I'm going to pop into Firefox and visit this site. It looks like it's still rebooting. Let's see if it shows up now. Okay, now it looks like it's up now. Refresh the page. This should work, I believe. It's taking its time doing it. If GitHub's down, then my own service is down. Okay, here we go. Solr server could be reached. Saying there's an internal server error. These things are always fun with Apache Solr. The annoying thing, so now we're all good. It just sometimes it takes a little time to start up. With Apache Solr starting in version 4 or 5, the setup process for it is a lot more strenuous on the servers. And I actually used to run hosted Apache Solr with 200 or 300 megabytes of RAM allocated to each instance. Nowadays, just to start up the Solr instance using Java, it takes about 240 or 250 megabytes of RAM. And then on top of that, all of your index data goes into RAM as well for faster search. So I have to continually expand the amount of RAM that I have available for each client on hosted Apache Solr. But you don't need to hear about my moaning about that in this live stream. But it is an interesting thing that teaches me a lot about Solr, hosting, Drupal, automation, all those kind of things by running this hosted Apache Solr service. And as I've said before, if you would like to have a hosted Apache Solr instance, go to hostedApacheSolr.com and sign up. Best way to do Drupal search. Okay, so this is all working now. And if I go to my index, I can index the site content and it should start showing up. So right now there's nothing in the index. There's 69 bytes. Solr's a bit too heavy for Daniel's liking. It can be. If you don't need the extra search capabilities, a database hosted search is not that bad. It's a lot better than it used to be, that's for sure. In Drupal, the database search used to be absolutely horrible. Nowadays, it's a lot better. So it has none of my content indexed. I'm going to go ahead and index the content. I'll do batches of 50 is okay. Something interesting to note when you're indexing content, either with database or Solr, if you have content that sometimes is very large, like let's say 500 kilobytes or a megabyte of data in the content, whether it's text or attachments and things, you might want to lower your batch size. Some people are like, oh, I want to content this as fast, or I want to index it as fast as possible. So I'm going to add 200 items or 500 items. That can work sometimes if all your content is text-based and there's not a lot of text. But, well, that's annoying. But sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it's because your batch size is too small. So I'm going to look and see what's causing this problem. Search API exception. Internal server error. Looks like whoever runs this hosted Apache Solr services is terrible at running this hosted Apache Solr service. Let me try running one item I'll do 2 at a time and see if that works. If it doesn't, then it might actually be a server issue. So the problem is that my my batch size of 50 was a little too big. But I'm going to go ahead and stop this really quick. I'll do 10 items. That should probably work. Let's see. All right, so that actually does work. And Daniel's saying in the chat that he uses something else. He can't remember what it is offhand. There's a lot of other things that you can use for search. You could use Solr. You can use Elasticsearch, which is also based on Lucene, which is the Solr, the same engine that powers Solr, but it's just a different API and different software on top of it to manage the indexing and the searching and all that. There's also there used to be the Google Search appliance. Some people actually still have those things kicking around. It was like a box that you installed in your data center for search, and you could configure it like Google Search, but for your sites. But now you have Google Custom Site Search. There's a couple other services that index your content through the internet, and then you can integrate it with your site. There's Algolia Search. Somebody mentioned, two Tonky Cats mentioned that. And there's a few other services like that out there. Some of them are actually a little easier than Solr to get working, but since I manage a hosted Solr service, it is overkill to use Solr Search for your personal blog. But I enjoy the quick ability to find anything on my site through Solr, so I still use it. And like I said, that related items block is very relevant and helpful for keeping visitors on my site. While it's doing that, I can actually start working on a search page. So we have, if I go to configuration, search API, it's still processing over in this tab. And it should now start saying that there's content indexed on the site. One thing to keep in mind is when you're indexing in Solr, by default, most systems have it set up to have a 2-minute delay between when you index something and when it's actually visible in the index. Because Solr indexing is a pretty heavyweight operation, and it takes a lot of CPU and memory to get everything into the index. So while it's putting in items in here, so it's at 870 items, but it's only showing 762 in with 92 sent but not yet processed. That's one thing to keep in mind. So a lot of times when I set up search for somebody, they add a new node and then they immediately search for it and they're like, it's not in the search index, search is broken. It's like, just wait 2 minutes. It's the same thing with caching. You add a new node and then you go on your phone and you don't see it. It's like, wait a couple minutes, the CDN is still updating, don't worry about it. So we have that. The next thing I want to do is set up a search page. And to do that, I believe there's a module, search API page, Drupal 8. I think it's like search API pages, yeah. And that might be the simplest way to go here. So you can also use views. Yeah, this hasn't had a release in a while. Let me check the guide here. Search forms and result pages. We want to do searching with views is what they do. I could avoid adding another module to the site and just set up a view. Okay, so add a new view. Name of your search index and fields. Okay, well let's try it this way. So in the past I've used search API pages just because it was quick to create a search page. But I'll do a view for this site and we'll see how simple or complex that is. I'll go to structure, views, add view, and we'll call it search. And we'll show index site content. That's my search index. Sort by unsorted, I guess. Create a page called search. Unformatted list of fields, that's fine. I'll display 10 with a pager. No menu link, no RSS. I'm not going to do a block for now. Save and edit. All right, and then this isn't very helpful. This is all the tags on my site. Let's see, so I'm gonna do, it just has tags. I want to do body probably, and title, if title's in there, title. And I don't want tags. What else do I have here? Excerpt. I'd rather have the excerpt than the body. So let me take the title and the excerpt and take out the body. Come on. There we go. Lunar is another thing too. It looks like Lunr, L-U-N-R, is another search option that somebody's mentioning in live chat. Let's see, use entity field rendering. That's fine. Plain text. Link to the content. We want the title to link. We'll try that. And then search search excerpt. I can't say the word. I'll just not say it. Apply. Okay, and then I'm going to take out the tags because we don't want the tags to show in search. All right, so it's interesting that there's default stuff even without a search term. I'm going to add let's see, what does it say here? As filter sorts, okay, so there's a group search called available. Search full text search. Okay, so this is what we want to add for our filter. Add search. Full text search is what we want. Expose the filter because we want people to be able to search. Let me look at jeffgeerling.com, what I have on the search page. Search. So I just have a button. Label search contains any of these words. Search API full text. Multiple words. So this is another thing where you can set some different options in the search here. I'm not going to talk about exactly what all these do, but there's different options that split up the words in different ways. And it also has to come back to your indexing too. There are some settings in your search index that you can parse words out and have like plurals turned into singulars, and you can have words cut up into like three-letter chunks so that you can search for 3 letters that are parts of words. A lot of different settings like that you might want to get into. The best thing that I always advise clients of Hosted Apache Solr to do is have a bunch of searches you expect to work and then do them. And if they don't work, then figure out how to make your Solr index work with those particular searches. So I'm just going to do that for now. Search the rendered HTML output. We can leave that to anything, apply. And now it should have a search field here, so it does. No results. I'm going to add, I'm just going to add a text area and say no results. Just do that for now. Apply. Mini pager, 10 items, that's fine. Access, I want to have view content as the view published content as the access control for it. And then I don't want it to show anything unless there's a search text. I forget how to do that. Basically, if this is empty, I don't want any results to be showing. And I don't know if there's a setting here. Oh, required maybe. Required, apply. Yeah, there we go. And then I'm going to change this to no results. Please enter a different search in the search box, something like that. I'll probably change that text someday, but for now, that's fine. All right, I'm going to save this view, and now I should, let's see how this is doing. Where's processing? It's almost finished, 2670. And if I go to my search page, it should have most of this stuff in the index already. As I said, it takes a couple minutes for it all to go in, but I believe it should mostly be in there. There are 2740 items. So there's plenty of content in the index, and this site search page should be working at this point. So I'm going to go to, I don't have the block set up yet. So I'm going to go to search, and there's no results here. I'll have to retheme this button and put it on the side and all that, but I can do that later. I'm going to search for Ansible, and let's see what we find. And that is not a very pretty looking list, but it worked. It kind of worked, at least. It's interesting that the results are a lot different. If I go to jeffgeerling.com and search for Ansible, the ordering of the results is a lot different. Well, actually, so slow Ansible playbook, check that. Ansible open sources. It's funny, the difference here, and I'm wondering if it's because I'm indexing a little bit of different content on my Drupal 7 site than the Drupal 8 site, or the weighting of it might be a little different, but Ansible is in all of these titles. The funny thing is I don't see the search excerpt in here. I wonder if it's not returning the excerpt in the view, or in the search. If I go to this index and edit it, content data source, that's fine. I don't see anything in here for the excerpt, returning the excerpt. I think it might be. This is where my knowledge of the Drupal 8 Search API Solr module is a little bit rusty, just because I've only done it twice in Drupal 8. I've set up probably 20 of these in Drupal 7, and a lot of things are different. But somewhere in here, there's like a thing that says return search expert with excerpt. I can't say that word. Return it with the retrieve result data from Solr. That might be it. I'm going to grab that too and save this, and let's see if that returns data. What is this? Unable to reach the server. That's not fun. What's going on here? It indexed, it couldn't do 94 items. That's interesting. All right, let's take a look at this. We'll do batches of 2. All the fun things with Solr. Couldn't index items because the Solr server is something's probably down with it. But we've gotten somewhere. We have search kind of sort of working here. And I'm going to work on getting a couple more things done. I might work a little bit on it on my downtime, just because I'm not as familiar with the Drupal 8 module. I don't want to spend an hour clicking through buttons back and forth on the next live stream, and I want to get to the point where we're actually deploying the site to jeffgeerling.com. So I'll probably wrap it up there today. And we got Solr working, we got search working, we just don't have it working optimally. And obviously when the server goes down while we're indexing, that's not a very fun thing. So it's probably something with the settings that I have set on there. Or maybe it just doesn't like having all 2,000 nodes on my site. But we got that done. We got through everything. I hope you're doing really well. As usual, I will mention that I have an Ansible 101 live stream coming up tomorrow. That is at 10 a.m., same channel, same place. So if you're not subscribed already, click subscribe below. And if you want to learn about Ansible, that's a pretty good way to learn about it. We're going to talk about Ansible roles and Ansible Vault, keeping things secret. And for the next few days, in addition to being able to donate $3 by clicking like on my video that I linked in the stream earlier, you can also get my books, Ansible for DevOps and Ansible for Kubernetes, free for the next few days, courtesy of Device 42. They sponsored another month of book giveaways for me. So please take advantage of that if you don't have those books. Even if you don't do automation work, those are a couple good books to have around to learn it if you are interested in deploying Drupal using better DevOps tools like Ansible, or getting into Kubernetes, that kind of thing. So please take advantage of that offer. It's only a few days left on it, and I hope you're well. And I'm going to see if when I end the stream today, it actually ends in the right time. And also thank you to everybody for posting in the live chat. It's always helpful. Like I obviously am one person that does not know everything, although I like to think so. But that, you know, like different search services, there are plenty of things out there that I don't even know about. Like I've never heard of Lunar, but it might be another good search service for certain applications. So thank you again. Stay safe. I will see you next week, and I'll see you tomorrow. And if you're interested in the Raspberry Pi cluster, I should have a couple videos coming out. So as with everything else, click subscribe below if you want to see all the content that I am hopefully able to produce during this wonderful time stuck at home for everybody.